Mike Basich has been a professional snowboarder for 20 years, pushing the boundaries of what's possible on and off the hill. I'm a self-proclaimed snow addict as well, and he's been one of my inspirations for many, many years. So it is really my honor to be here with him today. He has been hacking what's available to him and really embodies to me why the maker mentality is in all different areas, all different arenas. And it's just the mentality to be able to tweak your surroundings to do what you want them to do. So long before there was anything like a GoPro, Mike used to want to be filmed, be able to ride and film without a videographer, and would make mounts that came off of his shoulders and his backpack to be able to carry a full-size video camera and film himself. His most recent venture is this stunning 228 square foot homestead, off-grid homestead in the Sierra Mountains. And it's really a wonderful undertaking, as well as the fact that it has its own chairlift to boot. So Mike, what inspired you to build this off-grid homestead in the Sierras?
It was kind of in a stage when I was in the big of competition in my career, which got influenced a lot about how to grow, being sponsored, and kind of a little bit of the mainstream of that sport, how I was growing different things, what I was supposed to do. And I think all of us go through some stage of being influenced by what's going on in the world, and I bought the big house, I went and did all these things. I was making money at snowboarding, so I decided to grow with what I thought was successful. And shortly after that, I realized how much weight, a mortgage, all these different things that were the growth of the mainstream of the idea of success. So I started backpedal. One day I sold my house, got rid of everything, and I moved into my car. So I went from a 5,000 square foot house into about 65 square feet.
Wow, that's a huge leap.
And it didn't happen overnight. I took a lot of work to backpedal. And that kind of led me to understanding what was really that I needed to live. And I realized most of my time, the day I spend outside, I love being outside, and I just need a shelter to sleep in. And so I spent 2 years in my car understanding this and trying to get rid of stuff and get back to understanding what it was I needed. And that led to me wanting to be out in the backcountry in snowboarding, being in the snow in the mountains most of my life. I've ended up at Donner Summit. And that has brought me into these 40 acres I ended up investing in. Didn't have any house. It was advertised you couldn't access in the winter. And I wanted exactly what this place offered, which was a little bit of a struggle, not being connected to the grid or not even having the option to get forced to figure out how to make all the things that I used in my daily life. And that led me to building something very simple, very influenced by living in my car. My house is all 12 volt. It's very simple to work with. If you have a phone, a camera, different things, everything already is 12 volt. So once you start working with those things, you realize how simple stuff is. And a lot of stuff here that I'm seeing is you can do it yourself. And that's kind of what I love doing, is understanding and having appreciation of what you use puts a different value to the things you use in life.
Absolutely. Did you have that mentality before you embarked on this venture? I know you were hacking equipment and whatnot, but had you built anything on this scale before you decided to build this one?
I definitely have taken the approach in life of figuring out how to do stuff on my own, not on this level of going through a full day of it. There's different moments with my snowboard career, trying how to lose the photographer and shoot photos of myself. So wiring different things together, different projects, and this was a life project. And a little bit of a childhood dream of wanting to build something on my own, just my own hands, and that led me to building my house out of rocks.
Wow.
Really, I spent the first year with a teepee on my property, because I've learned the more you get connected to where you're at, the more you understand what's needed between the wind, the sun, the weather.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so rocks lasted, there's no maintenance on rocks. They're heavy, but I got in shape, which worked great for my snowboarding career. And it made me really understand, especially the sun, with producing your own electricity for lights, you realize it's so much easier, and you get so much more connected when you go to sleep with the sun.
Yeah.
And wake up with it. And these are the things that really help me find my way with what the universe, the whole life cycle is connected with yourself. And very beginning of my floor plan, when I started putting on this place, I realized, time is something that does not stop.
Right.
Everything else can not move forward, but time, you're working and playing and balancing with that. And I came back to, working with the sun a lot, just to how to work with that, to melt the snow from my front door, bring in the heat so I don't have to split as much firewood, and really working with that. And the one main thing that I learned that I didn't expect with the time part is the day I was born. And what I did was I made my floor plan originally off the golden ratio, which does everyone know what the golden ratio is? It's a quantum physics, mathematical nature is based on it. You always add the last two numbers to get the next number. And a lot of this is, let's say a seed gets planted. Once one goes up, one goes down, you add the 1 and 1, it could support 2 branches after that. 2 and 1, it could support 3 branches after that. And so I based, our bodies are built under that. So I wanted to work with that in architect, which I learned later that it makes sense that your body feels more comfortable in the space because it's built into the same equation. And back to the day I was born, I realized where the sun, on my birthday, my floor plan, there's a photo somewhere in the slideshow here that shows a center point that the sun casts a shadow within the relation of the golden ratio on the time I was born. And this was
That is amazing. That is definitely part of your cabin that I did not know about, even in having interviewed you previously. That is incredible. Wow.
Yeah. And different stuff like this has been a really gift on this adventure to be understanding of my life myself, of
Right.
when it started and the growth, and just being recognized every year that once around the sun traveling celebration of really seeing it happen, and versus just a thought of it your X amount of years now, but really seeing it happen with nature is something really that I've appreciated and been gifted to. I don't share it a lot, but this is something I wanted to share. That's
amazing. And honestly, that's a lot of the concepts that, architects of old used to work with and that have been lost over time. And it's great that you're tapping back into it. So all the different components that go into making a house from scratch and powering it with the sun and with wood fuel, correct? It's powered by sun and wood fuel?
Yeah, everything, my rule of thumb with this place was I don't want to build anything I have to feed.
Right.
Bringing someone up to fill a propane tank, any of that. So my heat, when the sun's not shining through the windows, is wood, which I have a fireplace for that, which is my cooking top for food, and an oven. I have a wood fire hot tub now, which has been a really enjoyable thing. And different things like that have been more work, of course. It took me 5 years to build a 230 square foot house. But it's been something that I realize it's all I really need.
How did you learn each one of the things that was needed? Like, say, for example, working with solar panels, or working with, even just building the structure, making it sure that it's structurally sound. Did you research these things and then learn about them and then go ahead and do it? Or how did you go about learning the skills?
A lot of it is just being around the different elements.
Mm-hmm.
If I go to the junkyard a lot to just figure out how to make something, to fix something on my car, so I'll take something apart at the junkyard and just visually see how this is placed. And I've done that a lot with everything. And I think a big part of that process is a little scary because I myself don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
I may fail and it might cost me 10 times more than it would have just had someone to come up and fix it. But my wanting has been the knowledge of knowing how. And down to the deep of that is just because I want to know how things work in my life. So I've always done that. I've failed, of course, but you always learn something different if you fail within your first idea.
Right.
And as long as you're open to listening and being
Right.
patient, those different answers and rewards come with that experience. And so that's kind of what happened with this and other things is just dive in and all of a sudden you meet people, whether it's just buying something at the hardware store, all of a sudden you met an engineer that wants to help you with your project. And I've sat down with a lot of friends with this project with the lift was a big project for me because
I want to hear all about this lift because, you know, there are people who built their own homestead, but I don't know anyone else who's built their own lift in their backyard. And I mean, it's perfectly suitable for you as well. But what, was it just something that you had in mind from the get-go when you started on the house? You said, I have to have a lift, or was that something that came about later on?
It definitely came later, but I did start with a tow rope. And so I took my mom's old car, she gave it to me, and I bought some golf cart wheels. A little bit of this was being influenced from my first trip to New Zealand.
Oh, wow.
And they have tow ropes there that are for the public, that are literally a rope, tires and rims, and they're very scary to ride because there's no safety switches. And
So it's not like a Palma lift, it's literally a rope tow.
yeah, they call them the nutcracker because
Oh,
you
wow.
wear a belt with this metal thing that looks like a nutcracker, and you whip it around the rope as it's flying by, and you get going.
So you decided that was a good idea and went home and built one of those first.
You know what? I figured like all I need to do is figure out how to get me to the top.
Right.
And so I started with different gears off a motorcycle, different things to figure out how to get the ratio down for the speed, and used trees as poles for the lift. But I soon realized my Donner Summit, my property is very rocky, and everything would get buried pretty quick. So I spent 2 years with a tow rope and building everything myself just with a welder. That was about all I used, and straps to strap everything to the trees, and a 5/8 rope. And I got lucky one summer talking to a friend that he had an old ski lift from Homewood, a local resort that was...
He actually had the ski lift?
Yeah, he bought it 6-7 years before I met him and never used it, and it was in a big pile. And I bought it for scrap metal price pretty much. I was like, I'm going to do this. This is a great thing coming my way, and it's bringing in a space to grow with what I'm experiencing on my property. And it's a one-seater lift, one person at a time, and that's mostly because the way it got engineered.
Right.
It's amazing engineering, the working with cable, and that's definitely, again, one of those appreciations that I have now going through this whole process, because it's the most fascinating engineering type of balancing act that I know of so far.
I mean, it is fine-tuned. It is definitely fine-tuned.
Yeah, and just the amount of effort it takes to get you off the ground. And my lift goes up about 160 vertical feet, and it's about 600-800 feet long, which is small.
Yeah.
But the amount of effort.
But it's not that small.
No, but the amount of energy you got put into it to just make that happen is significant. It's amazing. So every time I go to ski lift now, I have this very different appreciation for something I never had for 20, 25 years snowboarding.
Yeah.
And again, that's something I strive to do with the different things I use, and it's been really fascinating.
And then to actually see like a tangible amount of energy that's being used, you know, when you have a house that's off grid, you actually do see that. You know, it makes a difference if there's a lamp that you left on in a room and decided not to turn that off. You know, it really comes down to drilling down to how many watts you're using a day and what you're doing. And that is, like you said, it is such a beautiful thing in some ways. Like in my cabin, I actually have a pellet stove. And even having to go and like every single time go get a 40-pound bag and bring it back, it's so different than if you just turn up a thermostat and your house all of a sudden is warm and there's no repercussion except for your bill getting higher, you know. But when you see the physical incarnation of the energy that's being used, I think that's really fascinating. You do have a different appreciation for it.
Yeah, my number one actually element that I appreciate the most is water.
Yeah.
And
Where do you get your water?
I have 2 creeks on my property.
Oh, that's great.
So mixing cement to build the lift, everything that I've done, my house used a lot of cement with the rocks, and I had to lift everything. I didn't have water pumps, anything, so I moved everything by buckets and containers, which water weighs about 8 pounds a gallon.
Oh, wow.
And when you're doing this up a road or hiking, like I'm 3 miles off a paved road, so in the summer you can drive, but it takes about 30 minutes to go 3 miles. And in the winter, I'm using a snowcat or a snowmobile to move everything. So everything is definitely planned out very well. That has to do with weight.
Right.
And any amount of energy, like, just brushing your teeth and using the water. As I have such a different appreciation now because of the experience I've gone through.
Yeah.
That. And it's a lot. If you've done something like hiked a mountain or done a marathon or something that is exhausting, you have this adrenaline, like, appreciation. All your whole body, like, appreciates something. And that you get that when you go so far in the distance of trying to struggle to create something of your own.
And you get that every day now.
It's amazing. Yeah.
That is amazing. How many people were in the crew? Because I'm sure you had folks that were helping you, especially with the lift. There's towers to put up. How many people would you say, helped you with that project, even in just manpower?
The lift project took about 8 months, and I probably had about 30 different friends help time to time. Some joined in the beginning and weren't able to continue through, but this project, I wanted to get more people involved with my place, and so we worked a lot on the weekends, and I kind of prepared on the weeks to get things ready. And it was definitely done a little different than I think you'd normally build a ski lift. We used cables tied to trees to lift up towers.
Because it's usually helicopters, isn't that usually what they use to put the chairlift towers up?
And to figure out how to make a straight line vertically up was the most challenging part, because everything's rocky, and I had to build a road to each tower, and to have a straight line on the cable 25 feet up in the air once it's all done was the biggest part. That was hard because I had a small laser gun telescope that I used, and I had about a half hour in the evening that you could see it in the dusk, but not too dark where you couldn't see anymore. And so that part was really hard to figure out, each leg, how much it needed to be different in height on each corner of that leg.
And how many towers does it have?
It has 2 in the middle, a top base, and a bottom.
Oh, okay.
And when I got the lift, it was all in pieces, so part of it I had no idea how it went back together. Some of it was pretty straightforward, but the bottom I made a little different, and the top I used boulders for counterweights, which was really fun working with.
That's really cool.
There. And
talk
again,
about an ancient technique, yeah.
And then again, it's like the stuff that's already there.
Right, it's right
so
there
I
on your
have to bring
property.
a bunch of stuff up, and the work of just all of that has been a really nice appreciation, especially waking up on a weekend and it's sunny, it just snowed, and the lifts are packed, and you have this.
I can't tell you how jealous I am right now, by the way, I just want to say. Is it solar powered?
The lift is actually, the first process, it's a gas-powered motor. I have
it has a gas generator.
I have a pipe laid halfway down to it to do it on hydro.
Right.
So that's my ultimate goal.
Oh, that's great.
But I didn't know how much power it needed to turn it, because it came with a huge motor that was supposed to lift 300 people at a time.
Oh, wow.
So it was really hard to figure out that equation.
Right.
So again, a lot of things if I can't figure it out, just move forward with something until you get a feeling for it, and then step back a little bit and start working with, hopefully, the water next summer to make it
that would be really
go
cool.
direct.
I hope you're documenting that process, because that's going to be fascinating to watch happen. And I'm dying to ask you, what was that first experience like, the first time that you got to actually ride a chairlift that you built yourself, that you helped build on your own property right there?
It was really scary, actually.
Did I do this right?
Yeah, well, it was, of course, enjoyable to be on, but a chairlift, it's interesting. Once you get on it, you can't get off.
Oh, yeah.
You're on for the ride.
Did you take the first ride? Were you the test?
Well, what I did is I put a big log on the chair.
Oh, that's smart.
And, the log was only about 50 pounds, and the engineering part of the lift per person is up to 375 pounds. And so I'm about 180 pounds, and I can, jump straight from 50 to 180, which I wasn't sure what was going to happen, but it was a very rewarding, scary, and that fascinating experience of just going through something that much of a step of engineering. The engineering part was the most fascinating part, to ride something and then feel this idea that was brainstorming in your thoughts for years, and then to have it actually happen was.
And then if you get it going on hydro, I mean, it's kind of like setting a small-scale example that possibly ski areas could adopt in the future, no?
Yeah,
There's gotta be
if
something.
there's less people on a chairlift that can't handle, say, their water supply, maybe that's what could happen. It's just
Right.
less people, which on a ski resort, everyone's always trying to get to the top as fast as you can. Of course, the more that happens, the more it gets tracked out.
Right,
So there's really no rush in a way, besides not wanting to wait in the line.
right.
But it's really interesting, especially for my place, bringing something like this to the property, because all of a sudden you see tracks, different lines happening that you never saw before, like traverse lines to different areas because of a lift and just the way things flow without hiking, And that was neat to do, because I really got to bring in the photography side of things with other people and more of a community type of riding with everybody instead of spread out. It takes about 3 minutes to ride the lift. So it's not that long. It's good enough time
that's
to get
great.
down,
Yeah.
catch the next lift.
That's really not bad at all. That's awesome. I'm also curious to ask you, because 228 square feet, I think, is what your house is on the inside. That's pretty small. I mean, by most intensive purposes, to think that you have a sleeping area, you have a kitchen area, you do have a beautiful little living room with your windows all around. And I know that you were featured in the opening spread for Lloyd Kahn's Tiny Houses book. What can you say about, was it a difficult transition? I know you actually said that you went from living in your car at that point to being in this 228 square feet. But what was it like to have everything you own in just this tiny little space? And is it giving you a different perspective on how, people just want these huge spaces and it's kind of a little bit unnecessary at times? What are your thoughts on being in a tiny space?
I have a lot more extra time. My experience of the big house that I had, I spent half my time maintaining,
Right.
cleaning, and going in a smaller place. If you plan it out right, it can be pretty open feeling, and that's the beautiful thing about windows.
Yeah.
2 walls of my room are all glass,
Wow.
and that really helps feeling open. And even if you open the door, the outside becomes part of the house. I have a deck, so that felt a lot bigger when that got added on. But the inside by itself, like the couch, everything's built into the wall. And so the floor plan is really open. And I've had a lot of people stay there at it overnight, and it feels comfortable, flows. I highly recommend it. It's something that I would not know how to do the opposite now.
I was going to say, do you ever see yourself, is it possible for you to go into living in a big space again? Or is it you're just really content with that amount of space and feeling like that's exactly what you need?
Yeah, I think everything that happens when you get something oversized, a lot of things fall in place that take away.
Right.
You have to work longer to pay for it.
Right.
Just cleaning, maintaining, all these things kind of add up. And I think there's a lot of things, and met a lot of people through the Tiny Homes book, of just really seeing people being outside and being with people more.
Right.
And not being such an enclosed big building of their own house that feels cozy, of course,
Right.
and it's something that's nice to have. But what it might take away is the time being outside, and that's, I think, for me at least, in my experience with people, is some of the best place to be is just outside.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I concur with that. And your newest project that you've just gotten into is you've gone even smaller.
Yeah, I built the truck that it's in the new Tiny Homes on the Move book.
Oh, great.
And that's been really fun. That was actually, I built that about 3 years ago. And the reason was I travel up and down 80, and I need a snowmobile to go to my house sometimes. So in between storms, I'll have the snowmobile with me and chain check. You need chains on the trailer, the front axle, and big hassle turning around. So I built a truck with a sled rack on the back, and you took out the back of the truck, did a lot of welding to make it a sleeping place. And
So what is on the inside of it?
it's just simple bed with cabinets on the side. The truck I have, the back lifts up with hydraulics into a canvas tent.
Oh, cool.
And what I learned living in my car for the 2 years was that you don't have to plan your day out too much.
No.
Whether it's the weather, any new things that happen in your day, which that's something I really value, is starting your day without a plan. Because there's so much in the day that can come your way.
Right.
And to take on those opportunities and go with it is a great thing. And again, if you have too much going on, you don't have the space to do that. And so the truck gives me that a lot, whether I'm traveling, chasing storms for snowboarding, or just visiting somewhere and don't have to figure out where I have to end up that night.
That's great.
And this year, actually, I did another project with my girlfriend. We built a trailer, a tiny home on a trailer. And that...
Wait, so you have the truck and the trailer?
The house trailer is a new addition that is a multi-use thing that we can leave somewhere and go visit. Because I go to Alaska every so often for snowboarding, and
right.
Something that place offers that I can't find anywhere else. And so that's something that we...
You're going to drive the trailer up there then?
We did 2 months ago.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah,
and how was it? Did it work just great?
It was wonderful. Yeah. It was,
and is it just a trailer that you modified the inside? Like you worked with what was on the inside, or did you build the frame for it too as well?
It's a simple flatbed trailer, car trailer. I bolted down the first 2x4 on the floor, and the rest of it from there is just 2x4s like a normal house. So you
literally build a house on a trailer. It's
a really simple thing to do, even if you know nothing about carpentry of any of those things. But the reason of it is versus a motorhome is just the feeling that you really feel like you're in a house, and we have a wood fireplace in it. You get to really have house
so awesome
things, and
really
and now
awesome.
we get to use it for whatever is needed. For different, as a guest house, or if we want to go somewhere and check out a different place, we have that with us.
That's great. What's next?
Oh, back to enjoyment.
Back to enjoying it.
Yeah.
Do you have any other projects in mind that you want to embark on?
I have one project that I'm working on that's it's back to a little bit of designs of I'm working with some new elements of cinder blocks. It's a house building into the hillside.
Oh, cool. Where the hillside is actually part of the walls of the house.
Yeah.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah, so I'm working a little bit more with earth versus granite and rocks.
And it sounds like what you do, which is so inspirational to me, is you just try things, and when they fail, you just readjust and try something again. Because a lot of times I think people think that if they don't have a formal background in this, or they weren't taught formally how to build things, that maybe they don't want to take that first plunge. But you went ahead and just tried it and weren't attached to the result and just kept modifying from there.
Yeah, and I didn't go to college. I didn't take any courses on how to do carpentry or any of these things. I just learned as I've gone through everything. And my parents pushed a lot just to be outside and build tree houses, so that's definitely helped. But again, it's just being okay to fail.
Right.
I think is the number one best thing, just to give someone just go for it. It's going to turn into something beautiful if you put your heart into it, and there's always something there in a reward. And just to let go, don't have a fixed idea on where you need to go with it.
Right.
It's good to have goals and dreams, of course, but let the project bring on its own life, and people who come in and teach you a lot what's going to happen or what you might get challenged later. And those things, as long as you're listening with your projects, those projects become exactly this, whatever the life is that it wants to take on of its own.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, definitely everyone who helped has a nice wood stamp.
He was asking if Mike's friends who helped him build the lift get free lift tickets to ride.
Yeah, so there's about 30 passes out there so far.
Did you actually give them physical passes?
Well, there's a category of playground equipment, and there's no exact age group on playground equipment.
Oh, I love it. It's your playground equipment. I want a playground like that. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, that has to do with size.
Have you gone out to Taos, New Mexico, or seen the Earth ships, or looked at those designs at all? Because that kind of lends with, I think, your next project and building into the mountain and things.
Yeah, I've actually saw the Garbage Warrior video, and was very inspired by what I saw there. I know the sewer system that he has is very fascinating. Yeah, the tire foundation part, I wasn't sure about where I'm working with this part because it's a lot of moisture, and I was kind of concerned about mold for that exact approach with things. So I worked with cinder blocks for this exact project.
She's asking what does he do for the sewage for the house?
I have an outdoor compost toilet. And it's kind of a natural spot in between some rocks, and every 4 to 5 years, I'll light it on fire, which I don't necessarily need to on that level that often. The reason I do that and versus composting is because I have a lot of bears, a lot of animals, and so I try to stay away from composting food. If I'm cooking something, I put whatever's left non-edible into my fire. And so I work with a lot of that, and the way I shop for food and how I carry it up to my place, whether it's in a paper bag or a plastic bag, those choices get made a lot when I'm buying food on the shelf.
You said you were going to power your lift by hydro? That's what you're...
Yeah.
In the winter? It seems like that's particularly challenging.
Yeah, well, my goal for the hydro is my creeks run in the winter. Usually when there's enough snow, it keeps the water from freezing. When it's a winter, kind of in early December, the creeks won't run. But as soon as there's enough snow, the creeks start running. And I have about 85-foot vertical drop. And right now I have a 2-inch pipe laid to do down to a needle-sized hole. And it's amazing, the lift is off just the main shaft to the bow wheel is 50-to-1, and you can actually turn it with your hand. And I'm not wanting to make a hydroelectric lift. I just want to do actually an old like sawmill straight hydro with a paddle wheel. And so that's my goal with just downsizing the water, and I should have about 40 PSI to work with.
It's very cool.
I was wondering if you had any advice on where you could actually buy old ski lift equipment.
There's actually a website that someone steered me to look at. It's called Boneyard Resorts, I think.
Really?
Or Resort Boneyard. Yeah.
He has an
And
answer.
you can
Oh my
buy-
God, the secret is out.
You can buy
That's it.
tow ropes, T-bars, full chairlifts. Some are expensive, some aren't. The biggest expense seems to be the cable, and that was my weakest point on my system, and I could upgrade that at some point, but again, that's kind of a big expense. But right now I'm down to one person, which I'm not in a rush, so that works for me right now. And it was really fun working with cable, of learning how to weave the cable. That was something I was really appreciative of how to learn, because I worked with a logger who winches dozers across valleys, and they weave the cable to make that happen. So different things like that, whether it's actually from sailing or ski lifts, certain things have the same language. And so you could talk to a lot of different people that might have some advice for any kind of project.
Related question, did you ever consider like a kind of a drone that was large enough to pick up a single person? So it was kind of a ski lift without all the cables?
Two people?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's enough room for it. Where you get off, there's actually a spot, it kind of whips around pretty quick, and that had to do with the rock I was on. So for two people to get off properly before the chair spins is pretty quick. Adding two people, a lot of people think they know what to do to get off a lift, but like there's people I've had up there that are very advanced, and still it's a struggle when things aren't laid out so smoothly. Like right now I don't have like every safety switch to turn the lift off, so if you jerk something wrong or get your coat caught on something, you're going to go for a little bit of ride.
For those that aren't familiar with this here, is just how far away from public roads or ease of access is your property, and how much of an obstacle was that? How far out would you go to try to do it again?
If I was going to do it again, or do
Yes.
it? I'm 3 miles off a public road. I'm in a zone that's 40-acre parcels. I have everybody coming, my community has homes, they're permitted, everything we deal with is the town. Again, like the playground equipment needs a stamp, it needs to be engineered. And so there's different levels, like going out and trying to tow rope, just testing things out and then moving forward and getting to know people. Like I have my engineer that I worked with has helped me get in a place where I feel comfortable. and moving forward, because I've never done all this. You know, I've done some construction on houses and done the whole city loop of going through the process. And there's different elements. I mean, a ski lift's a big change in playground equipment, but it's something of your own. And when that shifts is when you start inviting people up. You know, there's something else happens there. So that's a process that I would go through, correct a little more overall thinking of the town, the community, and liability, all those kind of things. If you can get a cement truck 50 miles before the cement hardens, yeah. But I mean, again, those things you need to have sometimes. I mean, half of the stuff I did was hand mixed, so I went through, between my house and my chairlift, I went through about 3 trucks, just because the road was so brutal. That's over like a 7-year period. So certain things take a lot of work, different times, and a little more expensive, you know, going 50 miles somewhere to get something, but if you plan it out right, I'm luckily with half of my foundations on the lift and my house are on rock. And to engineer something in a granite rock is way easier than working with cement. It's much quicker. Everything you can do is almost you can carry it on your backpack, and you can run extension cords from a generator if you need to run a drill to drill holes. But yeah, the more something of like where lifts are, if you can work with rock versus cement, huge thing in saving, and trees. You know, trees, as long as they're healthy, and it's a kind of a temporarily thing. That was the tow ropes. Great thing about it is a temporarily thing. So that as soon as you go down to something into the ground, you have to work with testing your soil, which is a pretty easy process as well with the 5/8 rebar. You know, if it sinks more than an inch down, you need to keep digging until you find hard pan. And these are the things that you learn a lot as just going forward and talking to people. And the engineer, of course, will lay all this out. What you need to do and how you're going to do it is up to yourself, like through friends, through hired people, through the city, whatever it is that can guide you in the right way. And for me, it's been mostly about talking to people, that engineer, licensed person, or licensed contractor, to learn the proper routes. And it doesn't mean you have to go hire the contractor. And you can do all these things yourself, because there are people just, you know, I feel like I'm the same kind of person. I just might not have the certification, which you need on some level for the engineer, different parts if you're going to work with the city and different things like that. But certain things you can do on your own, and it's totally fine.
Did you work with Danny Davis? Because he's like a maker too, and he lives near that area.
Yeah, Danny Davis, he's a good friend of mine. He actually came up 2 years ago. We filmed a Mountain Dew commercial for one of his sponsors for Mountain Dew. So him and some friends, they definitely come up. And I try to keep my place pretty private for the reason of just keeping it private, because you can access it by snowmobiles. So some people get loose a little bit with that mentality. And I went to a place where I wanted to get away from people a little bit. And so it's hard to teach people who are so excited to find someone in the woods that, you know, because when you put a snowmobile track in, of course someone else is going to follow it. But I've worked a lot with friends and pro snowboarders to bring in, because I have a snowcat now, and those elements to bring to a snowboarder in the snow in your backyard is very dreamy for me and someone like Dan. We could build anything we want and just wait for it to snow and not be in a rush, don't have to touch a shovel.
Mike, I wonder if you would talk about the logistics of jumping out of a helicopter at 100 feet altitude on your snowboard. I'm Lloyd Kahn. I know Mike, and he was a star builder in our book Tiny Homes. But what got my attention was that jump out of the helicopter.
I don't know if anyone has seen Tiny Homes book, but it's a fascinating book by Lloyd.
Yay! Thank you, Lloyd.
He was lucky and thankful to give me some space in his book on my cabin, and there is a photo in there of this helicopter drop that is. I got into photography a lot for 10 years, again before GoPro or stuff like that was happening, and it was a dream of trying to make a photo look impossible. And the goal was to make a photo and crop out the helicopter so it looks like this person's falling out of the sky. So it needed to be big. The perspective, this was done in Alaska, and the perspective in Alaska is so challenging. Something can look possible. You get there and it's like, wow, this is 200 feet. And so in these type of moments, especially when you're hovering in a helicopter, with the door off, you can't hear, and there's all this stuff happening, you see different perspectives. And with the experience of being an athlete or any space where you need to put yourself in a zone and really just wait for that feeling is what happened, that I got in this feeling of comfort, relaxation, and seeing something happen. So I jumped out. It was a beautiful experience.
It was a gorgeous shot. If anyone just Googles Mike Basich 100-foot helicopter drop, you'll see a picture of it. But I think that relaxing is probably the last thing that would be on my mind if I was jumping out of a helicopter in Alaska.
Well, 2 weeks when I got the photo developed, this was about 10 years ago, this photo, and I got really scared. I got like the panic feeling I probably should have felt when I saw
Afterwards,
the photo.
when you saw the photo?
Yeah. And there's some other, if anyone would like to see more of the history of my projects, there's a documentary on Vimeo called Open Space, The Untold Stories of Mike Basich. And my house is in there, some other projects if you'd like to check that out.
And I just want to say thank you so much, Mike, just for being an inspiration to all of us for so many years. I really personally appreciate that, and I appreciate you coming out to Maker Faire and sharing the word with the community here. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for having me.